Okay, welcome back, folks. It's time to continue our look into hunting bullets for 6.5 Creedmoor. Today's contender is going to be the 129 grain Nosler Accubond long range. I've got a little bit of history with this bullet. I originally picked up several packs to shoot in 6.5 Grendel and ended up hitting the woods with these, hunting with these a little bit. I never got to kill anything with them, but I did hunt with them. But the accuracy in 6.5 Grendel really wasn't awesome. It was okay. It was adequate, but it wasn't terribly impressive. We also shot a couple of these back in our first 6.5 Creedmoor video when we were breaking in our new gun. Accuracy in that video wasn't exactly stellar either, but I want to loop back around and try it again today. We're kind of getting geared up for another ballistic gel test video. We've already got several bullets ready to go for gel testing. The 143 grain Hornady ELDX, we've shot this guy a good bit, and it's shooting very well. Our last video, we shot the 130 grain Sierra Game King. This thing shot amazing. And we've also got the 140 grain Hornady SST, which shot okay. If you're not following along with the series, our Thompson Center Compass has been shooting really, really well. The 140 grain SST, I went back and looked at that video. The groups were right around an inch. The last video with our Sierra Game King, we had groups from 0.4 something up to 0.8 something. So our worst group with this bullet was a 0.8 something. So average with these guys was probably around 0.7. And the 143 grain ELDX, we've been kind of messing around with a little bit more, shooting different combinations and stuff. But it's shooting comfortably under an inch as well. So that's kind of the capabilities of our gun. If these Nosler Accubonds can come in somewhere between that 0.7 and 1 inch range, I'll be very happy. Now, I talk a lot of crap about Nosler. It all comes down to accuracy. And it seems like every Nosler video we do, I come out of it a little bit disappointed with the accuracy. But that's not the whole story. I would say that Nosler has a very good reputation as far as terminal performance. You look at the Nosler Partition, the Nosler Ballistic Tips. These are legendary bullets. So, right, I don't want to be a Nosler hater, especially if they don't deserve it. And seeing how these Accubonds do in some ballistic gel might help boost my confidence a little bit. Because here's the truth, I don't need to shoot 0.7 inch groups to kill deer in Kentucky. I can shoot 1 inch groups. I can shoot, 1.5 inch groups and hit the woods with full confidence. Accuracy isn't everything. But hopefully this video, the Nosler Accubond long range is going to make me look stupid and our groups are going to be tiny. To try and help it along with that process, we're going to shoot the exact same powders that we shot in the last video with the 130 grain Sierra Game King. Almost the same weight bullet, right? This is a 129. I generally like to spice things up, throw in a little bit of variety, but I want to give this bullet the best chance to shoot some good groups. We just shot some awesome groups with these powders in this weight class, so let's just copy it over again and give Nosler the best opportunity to succeed. The first powder is Reloder 17. Now their max charge, going by, as far as load data goes, going by the Nosler manual, which I think I'm an edition behind on the Nosler manual. I have the 7th. But one thing I do love about Nosler, all of their load data is right on their website. So pulling up their latest info for this bullet, Reloder 17, they show a max charge of 43.5 grains. That's a little bit hotter than we shot in the last video with the Sierra data. I think we were at 43.2, but we're going to stick to Nosler's numbers. We're going to shoot up to 43.5 grains. And I want to shoot 0.4 of a grain increments, which means we'll be starting at 41.9 grains. The other powder is going to be Winchester 760. We've got the opposite scenario here with Winchester 760. The Nosler data is a little bit lighter than the Sierra was, so we're backing down that max charge a little bit from the last video. We're going to shoot up to 44.0 grains. That's what they show as max, so that's what we're going to stick with. We're going to stick with the 0.4 of a grain increments that we did with Reloder 17, so that means we'll be starting at 42.4 grains. Now these starting charges are just a little bit above their midpoint, so hopefully we don't get in trouble. We'll be watching our brass, looking out for pressure signs as we go along to make sure we don't. The primer we're going to use, same as the last video, is the CCI 41 primer, and this is a small rifle primer, which leads me into brass. We are shooting the Starline small rifle primered brass. There we go, look at that little primer. This stuff's been doing a good job for us. This box has now been fired 6 times. I haven't resized these guys yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just show you the whole process here in this video so you can see, how I've been doing my resizing. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Overall length is something I've been thinking a lot about since I decided to shoot this bullet. In the last video where we shot this bullet, way back when, our initial break-in video, we shot an overall length of 2.775 inches. That's what the Nosler load data says to use. However, back then and again today, I measured the maximum overall length for my gun before I hit the lands of my rifling. And the max is 2.960. It's a little bit longer than it was when we measured it previously back in that first video, just due to the gun getting broken in. But today it's 2.960. So if we stick with that 2.775 inch overall length, we're looking at what, 185 thousandths of jump to the lands. That's a lot. And like I said, the last time we shot this bullet, the groups were not that impressive. So what I want to do today is just stretch it out as much as I feel comfortable. So I was playing around with a bullet in our little split case here, and I'll give you a close-up picture. The little blue mark on the bullet is where the boat tail starts. So I just started playing around with it, seating it down, just seeing just how long I could make it without seating the bullet too shallow. And what you're looking at here is at 2.860. So this is a 100 thousandths jump to the lands. That's what I want to try out here today. So 85 thousandths longer than what Nosler recommends, but I'm hoping, maybe that'll help out with our accuracy. I tell you what, these are some pretty bullets. I really like those gray tips. They've got super shiny jackets and just look pretty sweet. There are a couple more bullets like this. There's the 130 grain Accubond, just standard Accubond. This is the 129 long range Accubond. And on the heavier side, they've got 140 grain Accubond and also 142 grain Accubond long range. So maybe the 142 Accubond long range or the 140 Accubond might be a better choice for the Creedmoor here. I don't know. Maybe we'll try them at some point. But today it's the 129. So let's get started. We need to start out by resizing our brass. And I'll tell you how I want to do it, because I want to go ahead and resize all 100 pieces. So what I do is take these 100 pieces and dump them into this tub. Now, if these were dirtier, they're really not that dirty right now, right? Just a little bit of fouling on the neck. It's not too bad. So I want to go ahead and size these guys without cleaning them. If your cases are dirtier, or if you're a little bit more paranoid, you can either throw these guys into a tumbler for a little bit to get most of the gunk off. If you use a dry tumbler, or if you use a wet tumbler, what I like to do is use a universal decapping die to just pop out the primer, and then I'll put them in the wet tumbler for a little while and get them mostly clean before sizing. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and size them this way. That way I'm only going to need to tumble once. So we're going to lube all of these cases, we're going to resize them, and then I'll quickly put them through my wet tumbler just to get the lube off of them, dry them off really well, and we're ready to go. So the lube I use for a batch this size is some lanolin and alcohol mixture. You can buy lanolin on Amazon pretty cheap. You can go to your local auto parts store and get some iso heat. Yeah, this stuff, which I guess is pretty much 100% isopropyl alcohol, or 99% or whatever. And it makes for a cheap case lube. So shake it up. Give 2 or 3 sprays on the cases, and then just shake it up to get it spread evenly. Another thing I like to do as I'm kind of shaking them around, they'll get oriented to where a whole bunch of the necks are pointed upwards, and I'll give them one more spray or 2 little sprays to get the lanolin down into some of the necks, and that seems to help keep that expander ball a little bit lubed as we go through the resizing. This stuff dries incredibly fast, so within 5 minutes at most, you're ready to start sizing. So let's have a look at resizing die setup next. All right, so we're using a Hornady resizing die from our custom grade new dimensions set, but sizing die setup is pretty much universal. You'll want to check your directions to be sure, but most of them are set up the same way. Turn on my press light here. So, the very basic setup is you screw down the die until it touches the shell holder, and then maybe you go just a little bit more to make sure you take all the slop out of the press and that you're going to get good contact between the shell holder and the bottom of your die. And then you lock down your ring and you're ready to go. You're ready to size. You're getting the case fully up into the die. You're allowing it to do as much sizing as it can, and that normally works just fine. But a lot of times this setting is going to size that piece of brass more than is necessary. And that means more case stretch, shorter case life, and just more work being done to the brass than is absolutely necessary. Like I mentioned, we are on our 6th firing. This will be, or no, we're moving on to our 7th firing. So these have been fired 6 times. We haven't even had to trim them yet. Now, one reason is this Starline brass comes very short. It came well short of our trim length and a whole lot short of our max length. With 6.5 Creedmoor, our trim length is 1.910 and our max length is 1.920. These are just now getting to the point where they're a little bit over trim length, like 1.912, 1.911. There we go. This guy's 1.911. This next one here is 1.913. So they're about to the point where I could probably trim them, but the fact that we've been careful about the way we set up our sizing die, it's taken a long time for these guys to stretch that much. And since they haven't stretched, I know that the brass really shouldn't be getting thinner down here above the web of the case, right? So let's get to it here. So like I said, we've got this set up like a standard die would be set up. What we can do is actually back it out. If I can get it loose, there we go. So let's back it out to where it just barely touches the shell holder. There's still a good amount of slop there. And what we use is the Hornady Headspace Comparator set. That's going to measure that distance from the base of the case to the shoulder. Now, all of these cases were fired in the same gun, the same chamber, so they should have very consistent measurements from cartridge base to shoulder. 1.535. Now, this is a good warning here. This one was reading a little bit long, and the reason why is 2 videos ago, we used the Remington 7.5 primer, and we had some pretty bad primer cratering. So this guy has got a raised up spot on its primer, which is screwing up that measurement from the cartridge base. So if your primers are maybe a little bit high, or maybe like me, you've got a gun that likes to crater them, that will definitely screw up your measurement. So if you're not getting a extremely consistent, like exactly consistent measurement from case to case with brass that was fired in one gun, you need to look at like what's going on with your setup, because you're probably not measuring them right. But here, so 1.535 is our number. Now in a bolt action rifle like this, we really don't even need to bump the shoulder, right? We could use a neck sizing die if we wanted to, and this piece of brass would go right back into that chamber, no problem. But what I've been doing here is bumping it 1 or 2 thousandths. It's generally, it's hard to really dial this in precisely with these, crude threads on the dies, but let's shoot for 1.533 or 1.534. We just want to bump it a little. So with the die down far enough just to lightly touch the shell holder, let's resize one. If we put it up in here, put a flashlight behind it, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the shell holder at the top of the stroke is actually not in contact with the die. There's just a little bit of daylight there. So let's bring it down, see what it measures. 1.535, doesn't look like we're quite there yet. So let's try to take our die down just a little bit. Still, pretty lightly touching here with the press. So let's run this guy back through one more time and see if that touched the shoulder. 1.534. So let's do the same thing with the next case. 1.535 through the die, and 1.534. Let's see what our case length looks like now with these guys. This guy is 1.914. This guy is 1.912. So let's take a case that we haven't sized yet and monitor it before and after. This guy's right at 1.910. Size it. And we're just a touch over 1.911. So the case only stretched a little over 1,000th of an inch. So that's really it. I mean, that is the way I've been treating this brass. That's the way I've been resizing it. And as soon as it spends a little bit of time in the tumbler, just to clean it up a little bit, get the lube off of it. After that, all I really need to do is chamfer the inside of the case mouth just a little bit to make sure that it's ready to accept that next bullet, and we'll be ready for primers. Okay, so our brass is in the tumbler now, and I thought I would take this little break here. I'm just going to let it run like 30 or 45 minutes, but I thought I would take this opportunity to explore the sizing die just a little bit more, talk through a couple more concepts. So this is some Hornady brass from some factory ammo. Actually, this has been reloaded. So this was from a reload. Now, if I measure the headspace with this guy, it's not that weird to see a different number. Like this guy reads 1.533. A few minutes ago, our fired but not resized brass was reading 1.535. I think a lot of this has to do with the amount of spring back in the brass. Fire the brass and it expands to the chamber and then it kind of springs back a little bit. The amount of annealing, I think the makeup of the brass itself, I think there's multiple factors there at play. So if you're shooting mixed brass, or if you're shooting brass of different ages, where some might be more work hardened than others, because like this brass, it was fired once as factory ammunition and then once as a reload, where that Starline brass has been fired 6 times and never annealed. They have different properties. So sometimes you'll see this number vary just a touch. Another thing you might have been wondering, so we set up the sizing die properly, but what if I didn't? What if I just screwed it down until it touched and then actually did set it up for a full resize? Press comes down and pushes on it pretty hard. A little bit of a cam over action and putting lots of pressure on it. Let me get some lube here. So let's see what our number comes out with at this setting. So there we are. Now in this case, the shell holder is touching the die. Let's see what it measures. 1.525 or 1.526. So at the maximum setting, this die is able to bump that shoulder 8 thousandths. So that's significant. And what I think I probably did a pretty poor job of explaining a few minutes ago was the way the case stretches. You know, by my understanding, it's in the chamber. The round goes off. You know, the firing pin is pushing up here against the firing pin, and the shoulder is in contact with the chamber. And then as the case expands, as it goes off, it essentially kind of grips that wall of the chamber. And back here at the case head, this is where there's that space for it to fill up between the breech face and the case head. And that's why, as the round stretches to fit the chamber, the stretching is actually taking place back here and not actually up here at the shoulder where you think it might be. So your case is stretched to the chamber. It's gotten a little touch thinner here. You resize it and then trim off brass up here, and you keep doing that over and over, and essentially, you know, and eventually your case gets weak down here and you get a case head separation and you blow your face off. So that's the whole point of this. That's what we're trying to avoid. That's why, although these are priced a little bit ridiculously, like these case comparator kits, the Headspace Comparator kits, I think it's about 40 bucks. I'll have a link down in the description for it. But it'll eventually pay for itself just in brass life. We're on our 7th firing with the Starline, and I have no doubt we're going to get 7 more. We're just not working the brass very hard. Okay, so 30 minutes in the tumbler, in the wet tumbler. These guys are looking nice and shiny and clean. Primer pocket's still a little bit dirty, but that's no big deal. After wet tumbling, these guys did spend about an hour in a dehydrator. So they are nice and dry and ready for primers. So next step, I need to hit these guys with the chamfer tool just lightly. They haven't been trimmed, so I've basically been chamfering the same case mouth 7 times. So I don't want to go crazy here, taking off a bunch of brass. Just getting them a little bit shiny and ready for the next bullet. So with all this gabbing I've been doing and tumbling brass and drying brass and wasting time, if I want to have enough daylight to be able to shoot comfortably on the range and not be rushed out there, I need to rush right now. So we're entering into the portion where I've covered this 800 million times in every 6.5 Creedmoor video we've done, priming and measuring some powder and setting our bullet seating die. So I think for this video we'll just skip it. That way I can save as much time as possible here with these processes and not be rushed on the range. So I will see you guys out there. Okay folks, I think we've got sufficient daylight to get the job done here. We've got a target at 100 yards. This is my Thompson Center compass. It has a 22-inch barrel with a 1 in 8 twist. Magneto speed chronograph, silencer co omega suppressor, 4:16 vortex scope, and that's about all I got to say about that. We're starting off with Reloder 17. The first charge weight is 41.9 grains. The gun is cold. All right, good velocity to start out with here. And for those of you keeping track since the last video and wondering, the first shot was indeed the slowest velocity, and it was slowest by 14 feet per second. That's a weird phenomenon we've been observing here recently. Also, so the group doesn't look too bad, but we have found with this gun, the first group is oftentimes our worst. Once it gets warmed up a little bit, it seems to tighten up a touch. So let's find out. Next up is 42.3 grains. So I just had a round misfire on me, and I've been sitting here a minute kind of wondering what the heck might be going on, because that never should have happened. Reloder 17 and the CCI 41 primer have never given us problems. It's got me worried that maybe I still had a piece of brass with some water in it or something. So like I said, I dried these guys in the dehumidifier for a pretty long time. I'll tell you what, let's try and move on. 42.7. We'll see if this is going to be a thing or if that was just a one-off sort of situation. Okay, that's interesting. So we follow up that weird failure with our best group so far and a really good looking standard deviation number. Weird, man. Pressure signs still look okay, so we are moving along. Next up is 43.1 grains. So that's a pretty interesting point of impact shift. We haven't seen that a whole lot with this gun, where the groups will just shift downward like that or shift at all really. And I haven't really been paying attention the last couple groups, whether our first shot low velocity situation was going on. It did not happen this time. The first two shots were actually the two highest velocities, so we might be on a wild goose chase there. Our previous observations might have just been coincidence. Last up with Reloder 17 is 43.5 grains. Pressure signs have looked okay so far. All right, so we finish it off at 2889 feet per second with an 8.3 feet per second standard deviation. That's good stuff. So a couple of those groups weren't terrible, but a couple of them were a little bit gross. So let's move on to Winchester 760, see if things get any better. 42.4 grains is first. All right, that is a very promising start, even though that first shot went way to the left. And I'll tell you why. I took about a 10 to 15 minute break. I ran inside, I got something to drink. I left the chamber chiller here, blowing air through the chamber and the barrel and the suppressor and all of that crap. So the gun definitely had a few minutes to cool down. And that first shot going left seems to be a trend with this gun. So I think it's still an open question. I'm not ready to say I know what's going on. It could be heat related, but as a couple commenters brought up after the last video, possibly it could have something to do with the suppressor, right? Suppressors have, like, you know, the first round pop phenomenon where, you know, the first shot is a little bit louder due to the gases that are in the suppressor when the shot goes off. Maybe it's affecting our groups. I don't know. That's something we're going to have to look into. Because occasionally, just like this last group, that first shot left thing is pretty significant. Like, that's an 1.5 inches left. So moving along to 42.8 grains. Wow, first shot way left again. Well, I like these standard deviation numbers, but once again, the first shot screwed up our group. So here's what we'll do. I've got 3 more groups left, no more chamber chiller. We're not going to blow any fresh air into the suppressor, and we'll see if we can get rid of that first shot left situation we got going on here. So next up is 43.2 grains. Wow, dramatically low. So I have a feeling that last group is probably right in the middle of a, you know, point of impact shift. I bet this next group is all low ones. I just got that feeling. 43.6 grains. Well, so much for that. First shot is high. All right, so I guess the wheels are coming off here on the top end with Winchester 760. That's unfortunate. But the pressure signs still look okay. So we're moving on to the last group here, 44.0 grains. All right, so we finished things off with a pretty decent group. 2841, that's some respectable velocity. So let's go back to the bench. All right, folks, are you prepared to be shocked? Or maybe you won't be shocked. I know I was shocked. That primer did not go off. This is our misfire. There's the strike. It doesn't seem particularly shallow. So now I'm wondering whether, I guess it could still be what I had mentioned out on the range. Maybe I did not get the brass as dry as I thought and got some water contamination or something. Another possibility is that I didn't quite get this primer seated all the way down into the primer pocket, or maybe I just got a dud primer. This is the first time I've ever had a CCI 41 fail to go off on me. So I'm going to consider this a complete fluke. We've got plenty of other things to waste our brain power on. I'm just going to consider this a fluke, but we will file it away into our library of weird experiences, and if we run into the problem again, then maybe we'll have to think a little harder on it. But interesting failure. Let's have a quick look at some pressure signs. This is our max charge of Reloder 17. This is looking, just the same as most of the other reasonably hot loads we've been shooting. A few shiny spots here and there. A little bit of an ejector circled sometimes, but nothing I'm too freaked out about. Still got nice round primers. A little bit cratered, like we've come to expect from this gun, but nothing to freak out about. On the Winchester 760 side of things, same deal. There's a little ejector mark there, but nothing I'm too freaked out about. Okay, so as much as I would rather not, let's go ahead and have a look at the groups. There's a whole lot of ugly going on around here. Our third and fourth group with Reloder 17 tightened up a little bit. 1.05 inches and 1.15 inches, that's not terrible. And even the last group there, 1.41, that one got a little bit ugly, but you could make the case that that's not terrible, I guess. Down on the Winchester 760 side of the house, the first two groups had promise. If it wasn't for those flyers that we got way out to the left. And if you'll remember back to, the range time there, after the second group, I stopped using the chamber chiller. So I'd have to say at this point, it is definitely possible that maybe blowing fresh air into the suppressor is possibly having an effect. Going to have to investigate this a whole lot more before we come to any conclusions. But it might be just about time to maybe do a little bit of testing without the suppressor and see if we can get an explanation for that. But that was weird, very weird. I guess the good news there is our highest group there at 44.0 grains of Winchester 760 was our best group with that powder at 1.01 inches. That was our best group of the day. The velocity is certainly respectable at 2841, and the standard deviation of 8.1 is pretty darn good as well. Pretty decent standard deviation numbers today. We had 5 of them below 10 and really only had one that was ugly. That second group, 42.3 grains of Reloder 17, was a little bit gross at 37.0. But overall, we had somewhat consistent velocities today. But, let's be honest. Compared to the other bullets we've tested so far in this gun, this would have to be our worst shooter so far. So even our best group from today, 1.01 inches, is bigger, significantly bigger than the worst group from our last video with the 130 grain Sierra Match King. So my overall disappointment in the accuracy with this bullet continues. It's unfortunate, it really is. Now maybe our tune will change once we shoot these guys into some ballistic gel and see how they perform. But it's right there in the name, Accubond long range. If I was looking for a long range bullet, a long range hunting bullet especially, you have to have both. You have to have accuracy. You have to have terminal performance. And we just don't have the accuracy here. Maybe it's an Accubond short range, but I don't know that it lives up to the Accubond long range name. So I think that's pretty much it. A little bit weirded out by the dud we got with the CCI 41. Still not sure what to think about that. I think for the next video, we'll just go ahead and do our ballistic gel test. We've got the 143 grain ELDX. We've got the 129 grain Accubond long range. We've got the 140 grain Hornady SST, and we've got the 130 grain Sierra Game King. There is one more I would really like to add in, and that is the 130 grain SST, or 129 grain SST, I'm sorry. But you know what? At 4 bullets, we're already kind of pushing it a little bit. Like, that's going to be a lot of bullets in the ballistic gel. It's going to get torn up. there's only so many bullets you can put through it before you need to melt it down and start over. So I think that's what we'll do. I think we'll go ahead with the 4 that we've got. The next 6.5 Creedmoor video will be ballistic gel tests with these 4. And then we'll just keep testing from there. We'll eventually do another gel test with the, with the remaining bullets that we've got on hand. And maybe by that point we'll add another 1 or 2 to the list. So I think that covers it for today. Sorry about the long video here. Well, I won't say I'm sorry, because there is a lot of you guys who like the long videos, and this seemed like an appropriate time to cover resizing die setup. I haven't really covered that well in 6.5 Creedmoor, so this was a good opportunity to cover that. If you'd like to help support my channel, you can come to patreon.com/reloading. Also check out my description, the video description. I'll have links for the Accubond long range and the Hornady Headspace Comparator kit and other things, and those are affiliate links. So if you buy or go shopping using my links, they give me a little referral fee and it adds up quick. It helps support the channel. So if you're shopping at Brownells, if you're shopping at Natchez Shooter Supplies, if you're shopping at Optics Planet or Amazon.com, come to one of my videos, click on one of my links to get you there, and it helps support the channel. So thanks a lot for all the support, and I'll see you guys next time.